Hi, my name is Devin Gates. I'm really excited to be part of this Unity Slam concert tonight. I'm going to be singing Lovely Day by Bill Withers, and I hope you have a great night. Here it is. When I wake up in the morning, the sunlight hurts my eyes, and something without warning, bears heavy on my mind. Just one look at you, and I know everything's alright. Oh, just one look at you, and I know everything is gonna be a lovely day. Oh, and the day that lies ahead of me seems impossible to face. Oh, and when someone else instead of me, always seems to know the way. Oh, but just one look at you, and I know everything is gonna be alright. Oh, just one look at you. Oh, and I know that it's gonna be a lovely day. Ooh, when I wake up in the morning, and the sunlight hurts my eyes. Oh, it's something without warning, love. Yeah, it bears heavy on my mind. Oh, just one look at you, and I know that everything is alright. Everything is alright. Everything is alright. And just one look at you, just one. And I know that it's gonna be, that it's gonna be a lovely day. Have a great night.
Thank you, everybody. And what an amazing, amazing rendition of Bill Withers' classic Lovely Day. Thank you so much, Devin. I have chills. I don't know about anybody else, but what a great way to start our Unity Story Slam. And we will be hearing from her and other talented jazz musicians later in the program. My name is Sejal Chagallotti, and I'm Harvard Business School class of 2000. And I'm here with my partner, Jeannie Park, from the college class of 83. We're proudly representing the Harvard Asian American Alumni Alliance, as well as our partners in Unity. The Unity partner organizations, the Harvard Black Alumni Society, the Harvard Latino Alumni Alliance, and the Native American Alumni of Harvard University together for this Story Slam. And it has been a wonderful more than a few months of this in planning, and we're delighted to be here with all of you, and it's promising to be the most lovely evening for all of us, evening, morning, wherever you're calling from, for all of us. Jean and I are both coming from the traditional land of the Lenape people in New York City. We acknowledge and pay our respects to them and to the Massachusetts people on whose land we all came together through Harvard. Now I'm going to hand it over to Jeannie.
Thank you, Sejal. Stories are an important way to remember and make sense of our histories and our traditions and ourselves. And tonight, you'll hear some fantastic stories from our fellow alumni of color. Guiding you through this event will be Eliana Murillo from the college class of 2010. Eliana has a staggeringly wide-ranging list of accomplishments in tech, design, startup ventures, multicultural marketing, and in creating community. A couple fun facts: she co-founded her family's award-winning tequila company, Tequila Alquimia, and founded and leads Latinas Who Brunch, a community of badass Latinas, as she calls it. You can read more about her at the link in the chat, but you can probably tell already that she is going to keep this slam lively. One quick housekeeping note: please try to use speaker view in Zoom so that your screen will be focused on the speaker at all times. If you go to the top right of your Zoom screen, click on the icon that says view and make sure you've selected speaker. And now that we're all set, thank you for hosting our Story Slam, Eliana, and over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for being here and welcome. It is wonderful to be here with you for the first ever Unity Weekend celebrating alumni of color. And as you know, storytelling is a powerful art that exists across cultures and traditions. But too often our stories have been erased from history, hushed in campus interactions, and even omitted from Harvard curriculum. And so the 5 storytellers you're hearing about tonight are here to change that, with deeply personal stories of struggle and strength and individual and social change. All 5 members, all 5 of the people are members of the different Unity sponsoring organizations. So HLAA, HBAS, NAAHU, and H4A. They and many other alums responded to our call for great stories to be told well. So we thank everyone who submitted stories, and we wish we could share them all, but we're gonna get started with our first story, and I'll tell you about the process of selecting the stories afterward. So our first storyteller and cumpleañera, it's her birthday today, is Rosa Evangelina Beltran, a Mexican-American vocalist, poet, performance artist, and educator based in LA. At Harvard, Rosa studied history and literature. She worked as the dorm crew captain and writing center tutor, and sang with Mariachi Veritas and the Radcliffe Choral Society. She did it all. So we wish her a very happy birthday, and we send her a virtual boba and lots of love. It's her favorite drink. And so her story is titled Family Chisme, which means gossip. And by the way, feel free to show some love in the chat and use the reaction buttons as we go. So let's listen to Rosa's story.
Hola, ¿es usted Rosa? Yo soy su nieta. I knock on the door of the house in Tlaquepaque, Mexico, and when the woman I'm looking for opens it, I say, "Hi, are you Rosa? I'm your granddaughter." 20 years have passed since my paternal grandmother and I have seen each other. My parents weren't married, and when they separated, all ties were cut between their families. In my freshman year of college, I finally get my papeles, my US citizenship, and I can now travel freely to the country where I was born. This particular summer, I'm on a mission. I'm 24, the same age my mom was when I was born, and I decide I'm finally ready to meet the woman whose name has both haunted and held together all the chisme, the scandalous stories about the other side of my family. The woman I'm named after is standing in front of me. She's wearing glasses and has really short hair, the color of sand dollars. Her hands are wet from washing something. She invites me in and we sit in her living room and talk for a while. It's really awkward, like a Mexican soap opera, but without the dramatic music. We look at pictures and on the TV stand, there's an invitation for my baptism. This folded up memento not only proves I was once a part of her family, but the fact she kept it all these years makes me wonder, did she carry me in her heart all this time? It gets late and we start to say goodbye when the house phone rings. It's him. ¿Dónde vives? I live in LA. Are you in school? Do you work? I graduated from Harvard. Do you need any money? I'm good. I wasn't. He gives me his phone number. I don't give him mine. Whatever the courtship rules are between absentee fathers and grown daughters, he never hears from me again. That's right. I ghosted his ass. Over the years, I never felt the need to seek a relationship with my bio dad, and if I did, I buried it. I had my mom, 4 amazing siblings. I was good. One night, during COVID, my mom and I are in her living room listening to La Sonora Santanera, her favorite band, and I'm ready for our annual confrontation about this family chisme. I hate to interrupt the kings of Mexican tropical music, but in my best Spanglish, I say to her, Ma, I'm dropping my last name. I don't even know that guy. And I'm so cansada, so tired of being reminded that half my DNA came from some irresponsible bearded ghost. My mom turns down the music and says to me, Hija, I never told you this, but your dad was an illegitimate child and he never knew his father. Your last name, Beltran, was passed down to you through your grandmother, Rosa. I feel the room begin to spin. And I do what anybody would do in this situation. I run to the bathroom and throw up. Maybe it was the tacos. Or maybe what I'm throwing up is the shame I've carried my whole life about being illegitimate, about being a brown immigrant without papers, about being unwanted in more ways than one. My mom goes on. Your grandma Rosa helped me. In LA, when your dad didn't show up, she took me to a lawyer and helped me apply for my green card so we could stay in this country. That changed our lives. I hear my mother, this warrior woman, sitting in front of me, and I take it all in. For years, I worked to erase my last name, divorce the other half of my DNA, and become my authentic self. All the things we do to heal fatherlessness. And now, what am I supposed to do with this information? If La Sonora Santanera had actually been playing in our living room that night, I know they would have stopped to listen to this chisme. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosa. If you see in the chat, people felt that deeply. And so thank you. What a powerful story. And so many of us have discovered backstories about our names that were central to our histories and identities. And not surprising, given her story, Rosa is a passionate advocate for trauma-informed care and education. So thank you for everything you do, Rosa. And again, happy birthday. So now A word about why this whole storyteller experience, Story Slam, is a little different than others you may have attended before. So while slams are normally competitive, with contestants being ranked at the event by judges or an audience, the Unity Committee decided to create an event that is more about community than competition. So you'll be spared the burden of trying to choose your favorite story because they're all amazing, but the hard work of selecting tonight's 5 storytellers through video submissions fell on the distinguished panel of 7 judges. They're all Harvard alums of color and storytellers themselves who are prominent across the board in areas of arts and literature, media, entertainment, law, and medicine. So our judges are Mickey Carter, Christian Carvajal, Mabel Chan, Julianne Cromit, Kelly D. Shapiro, Braxton Brooks, and Darshak Sanghavi. So thank you to our judges, and to see their bios and all the information about the storytellers, judges, musicians, and myself, you can click on the link that's now in the chat. So our second storyteller tonight is the amazing Shade El Hawari. And we're very excited to have her. She is from LA, and Shade's commitment to transforming underserved communities and fighting for social justice has inspired her to become a college counselor, an organizer in South Central, and an educator in Brooklyn. At the Community Coalition, she trains and supports activists across the nation. She is a first-generation multilingual American of African and Latina descent from Muslim and Christian families, and a free spirit, as you'll hear, because she's going to share her story of why the Eat, Pray, Love experience ain't just for white girls.
Lately, I've been struggling with work-life balance, and I don't know about you, but for me, it's not just the pandemic. I love what I do. I am out here developing the next generation of activists and organizers for the social justice movement. And as much as I love it, I also love self-care. That feeling I get when I'm eating healthy and exercising and meditating and dancing and traveling. It's just that I honestly haven't done anything on the personal side. I'm gaining weight because I've been skipping meals, which doesn't make any sense, but I know I haven't been exercising or meditating. I can't remember the last time I went out dancing without work on my mind, and I haven't traveled solo in years. It feels like my personal checklist is done, but my work checklist is done, but my personal checklist, none. The thing about it is, I used to be that person. 5 years ago, when I was 28, I went on my own Eat, Pray, Love journey, and it was incredible. I feel like I really learned and became the best version of myself. I quit my job as a high school teacher. I bought a bright red backpack. I sold everything in my Brooklyn apartment, and I went on this journey to really discover myself. And honestly, I wish I could tell y'all about everywhere I went. I went so many places in that year, but we don't have all day. And so I'll give you some of the highlights. I started off on a safari in South Africa. Then I went to Dubai, where I lived in opulence. I'm talking about brunches in castles, 7-star hotels. It was wild. I blew my budget, which is why I was so lucky that my grandmother was in Egypt visiting family. And so I went to stay with her for a few weeks to save some money. We practiced Arabic, we bonded, we reconnected, but I was under her strict Muslim rules. And so I had to sneak away. And when I did, I swam in the Nile and I scuba dived in the Red Sea. I mean, it was incredible, and it didn't stop there. I rode on ATVs and kissed some white boys in Greece. I experienced paradise in Croatia. I met a cutie in Croatia and went with him to Austria, and I just zigzagged through Europe. I tasted delicious food in the Czech Republic. I encountered racism in Poland. I danced the night away in Ukraine. I even dipped my toes in bathhouses in Hungary. I climbed the Eiffel Tower and I rode on the London Eye. I mean, I went everywhere. I even made it to Latin America and Asia. And eventually I wound up back in Africa, where I road tripped through Morocco. And I honestly had the time of my life in Cape Verde, or Cabo Verde, as the locals call it. The most beautiful Black people fishing and diving and surfing on the most beautiful beaches I had ever seen. But the thing about it is, it's not about where I traveled, but it's about how I did it. Let me tell you, I was on a budget. I found $19 flights from London to Morocco. I jumped in taxis with strangers and then went with them to their Airbnb and split the cost. I even met a porn star on the beach who offered to let me stay with her for 2 whole weeks for free. These were lifesavers, you all. Like, they were so amazing because my max budget per night was like $5 to $10. In some of these places, the minimum I found, nothing was under $30. And the average was like $200. And I honestly, like, the stories of generosity were endless because I would have never been able to afford this adventure on the budget that I had. And, you know, it's mind-blowing because when I first read Eat, Pray, Love, I remember thinking, this shit right here is for white girls. Wealthy, privileged white people. And I was like, I mean, who has the luxury not to work? Honestly, me, the daughter of Egyptian and Guatemalan immigrants, people of color like us who are first generation, especially those of us who made it here. I mean, you don't get to Harvard from the hood by not being on top of your shit. Like, you just don't. And so for me, I feel like I had to learn. And through those travels, I felt like I had so much fun, but I was also free and I felt so fearless. And that's what I want to get back to. I had the time of my life, but it was because I really knew and learned what it meant to take care of myself, to listen to myself, to wake up and do my morning routine, smile, which is something that I made up, but it's smile and gratitude. Meditation and visualization, inner child affirmations, loving my body, which is about exercising, eating breakfast, going to the bathroom if I have to, and exploring my mind and soul, which is all about reading and journaling. And honestly, I know that living here right now in LA, amidst all the injustices and inequities that we see every day in our lives, like, I can use Smile to find inner peace. My morning routine, that's what it's there for. And so I'm coming back, while I've struggled with work-life balance, I'm coming back to really understand, and I'm getting there little by little.
Do you all feel crazy inspired to go on a trip right now? Drop it in the chat. I see people responding. Sade, you're amazing. That was absolutely incredible. Thank you for sharing your story. I'll give it a couple seconds for people to catch up because that was so beautiful and powerful, and everything you brought us to at the end was just incredible. So thank you for that. Back to my MC duties, because I'm just moved here. I want to let you know that after the stories are all presented, we'll have a talk back with the amazing storytellers. So if you have a question for Rosa or Sade or any of the next 3 storytellers to come, you can chat them directly in the chat to, the name is Questions for Storytellers, Jane Sujenbach. And so it'll be near the top of the participations list. So indicate who your question is for. And I'm sure you have a lot about Sade's budget. So after the talk back, we'll go into the break rooms. We'll have a chance to talk to the storytellers or mingle amongst yourselves. So that was amazing. The last 2 stories have been so moving, and we have so much more. So our next storyteller is Ethel Billy Branch, who has not just 1, but 3 Harvard degrees. And she's now in Flagstaff, Arizona, but she's born and raised on the Navajo Nation. This is pretty incredible. She previously served as Attorney General of the Navajo Nation and is an elected director of the Harvard Alumni Association. Ethel's Navajo and Hopi families COVID-19 relief fund has provided over $10 million in direct relief to almost 500,000 Navajo and Hopi tribal members during the pandemic. So I can't wait to hear her story, and it is titled Coming Full Circle.
As a child, I distinctly remember a very hot day. I was walking to the outhouse and I looked out on the horizon and I could see the nearest town to where I grew up, Winslow, Arizona. And I just looked out there and I thought, you know, today's really hot. I would love to have a cold bowl of cereal. Like, what would I give to have a cold bowl of cereal? And then I looked out again and I thought, man, the poorest kid in Winslow doesn't have to yearn for a bowl of cereal like I do. They can just walk to the refrigerator, open it up, and they have cold milk. I don't even have a refrigerator, much less electricity. My parents don't buy milk because it spoils in our ice chest. And, this story of inequity is something that I grew up with. My circumstances were very different from the people living 20 miles away from me in Winslow. And this story remains the same today. A third of my people live without running water and a third live without electricity. The home I grew up in still doesn't have these things. The 5-mile road from our house to the highway remains unpaved. And so, growing up, I often felt like I had more in common with the kids that I saw in the National Geographic magazines than I did with my own neighbors. And I always wonder, why do things change so significantly when you cross the reservation line? What is it about that fence line that makes a difference in whether I have electricity or running water or a telephone? What is it about my community that makes it okay for us to have less than others? So this question really bothered me as a child. And then in high school, I attended a public high school. And I was going through history courses. It struck me that Native Americans really weren't covered in the history books. I mean, they talked about prehistoric people who are no longer here in the first chapter. And that was the last you heard of Native Americans. It was like we were written out of history. And I really wanted to hear more about, the living, breathing Native Americans that were still here, like myself, and thought, I want to rewrite the history books someday. And, my budding activism took a backseat as I focused on, getting the best grades and getting into college. High school was the first time that I was able to participate in extracurriculars, because up until that point, I had a 3-hour bus commute into and out of the reservation. And so I made the most of that experience. I joined every club I could, every sport I could, ran for president of everything I could. Trying to get the most out of that experience, because I'd never had that opportunity before. And that happened to be the perfect thing to do if you wanted to go to a school like Harvard. And I was just looking to get as far from my community as I could. I was working so hard to get out of the poverty in my community, and was afraid that if I stayed home, I would never be able to get out of that environment. So Harvard was the school furthest away from home in basically every respect. So I happily departed for that journey, and plan to never look back. But in my studies at Harvard, I stumbled into an American West history course and learned about the dispossession of the Native peoples of this land. And realized, wow, the law has played this huge role in legitimizing this process. And I want to learn how to take that apart and make sure that the people in my community are treated as equal human beings, as equal Americans, and have access to the same resources that any other citizen in this country does. And so, I embarked on that path, was fortunate to be selected to be Attorney General of my nation, and had the opportunity to go home and try to take on some of these problems, and struggle to transform a failing criminal justice system. And I personally grew up in situations where my family needed to call the police for help, but we couldn't do it because we didn't have a phone. And in the one instance when we were able to contact the police using a CB radio, they weren't able to find our home because we lived on a dirt road in an unmapped region, essentially. And so we were kind of left on our own. And that was very much in my mind in trying to revise and strengthen our public safety system. But there was a lack of political will to act and infuse our system with the resources it needed. So I learned the limitations of government and, stepped away when my term ended, and found myself taking on the challenge of COVID, which struck our community shortly after my term ended. And that has just been really, really incredible. We've been so successful in bringing resources to our community. And now we're in a position where we have funds left over and are able to invest in our community, invest in our own people, and transform our community. So hopefully the future generations of children in our community don't have to long for cold milk the way I did.
Thank you so much for your story and your work, Ethel. It's so inspiring. And as you can see in the chat, people are responding knowing that they have people now who are role models to look to like you. So thank you for that. And for everyone here, and if you know of others who might be interested, if you'd like more information, you can find more about the Navajo and Hopi COVID-19 Relief Fund that she led. So through GoFundMe, which will be in the chat, you can support there. Now the fund is transitioning to resiliency-based work to address the inequalities that Ethel talked about, her lived experience. Thank you for sharing that. And it still exists today, and we can all play a role in supporting. And that all the data points she shared, the data is real. Her lived experience matches what she shared about a third of the community not having electricity and running water. So before we continue on to our next stories, thank you again to Ethel, and please join me in welcoming Harvard senior Ria Modak, a supremely talented classical and flamenco guitarist and composer-improviser. So Ria has been recognized by the Lincoln Center Chamber Music Society and appeared on NPR's From the Top. As a musician and scholar, both at Harvard and the New England Conservatory, she is energized by the brilliant imaginations of BIPOC and queer artists. So Ria will perform an excerpt from Nelly's, a piece called Nelly by Antonio Lauro. Thank you. Thank you so much. Isn't that beautiful? I love it. And also let's wish Ria the best in her senior year. So like most of our storytellers tonight, our fourth storyteller is Jalen Pernell, who grew up in California. She studied poli-sci at Baylor University in Texas. In 2016, she joined Teach for America and taught in San Jose, California for 2 years. And after that, she earned her master's in education at Harvard, and she currently lives in Cambridge. And she will be sharing her story called Neutral.
When I was 5, I remember standing in front of the mirror and squeezing my cheeks, waiting for them to turn pink. Earlier that day, my teacher had mentioned how often another student blushed, and I shouted out, "I blush all the time too," as a teacher's pet. She harshly replied, "Black people don't blush." I didn't understand why not. At 8, my blonde best friends from down the street couldn't play one morning because their mom was bleaching their hair. Didn't exactly know what bleaching was, but I ran to my mom and I asked her if she could bleach mine too. "Jalen, we don't do that," she said. And I didn't understand why my hair couldn't do the things that theirs did. When I was 18, my friends and I ventured away from our predominantly white college campus into the outskirts of our predominantly Black college town. We circled the parking lot and we saw for the first time a crowd of Black faces. One of them clearly feared for her safety, and she boldly said to us, "We can't stay here. They're going to break into our car. They're Black. They're going to attack us." I shrank into my own Black skin, didn't have anything to say. And the celebration ended there. As a junior in college, a white classmate came up to me and asked me why Black people have such odd names. I laughed and I said that we should stick with easier names. A Black classmate listening nearby audibly cringed. Oof. I was so ashamed. I've grown up through my entire life, from my childhood into my adulthood, in a sea of white faces. I'm often the only Black person in the room. And to be honest, I never thought that was weird until I was a freshman in college and I joined my first Black student union. That's when I started to dissect how I sat in my own identity. You see, I'd always seen myself and my Blackness as a neutral part of me. I was tall, I was smart, I liked tennis, and I was Black. These things weren't good, bad, exceptional, or controversial. They just were. I just was. And it wasn't until joining that Black student union that I started to unpack all the ways that I've been subconsciously pushing down parts of myself, and I didn't even realize it. And I started to understand all of the ways that I was subconsciously apologizing. And in some ways, I'm still apologizing, but in more ways, I'm still learning. And I'm starting to find my voice. I've stopped prioritizing the comfort of others over my right to exist, over the right for my Blackness to find peace in a world that prays for its discontent. It took me too long to realize all of the ways that I've been faking neutrality at the expense of my own skin. And the shame of that truth has come in painful waves. Sometimes I'm still that 18-year-old sitting in the backseat of that car, silent and lonely. But as I've gotten older, my Blackness has gotten louder. It's gotten bolder. At 22, I started telling the baristas at Starbucks how to say my name, my real name, and how to spell it correctly. It's Jalen, Jailyn. Before that, I was simply Jay. And at 24, my uncle warned a younger cousin of mine to stay out of the sun to avoid getting too dark. The next day, we spent the whole day outside. Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie wrote through the voice of Ife Melu and Americana. Some Black women will rather walk naked through the streets than wear their natural hair out. That hit me like a punch to the gut. And at 27, I took my braids out. And I felt as if I was letting the world see me, every natural part of me, for the first time. My growth has been a bumpy and at times painful road, but it's one that leads to freedom. And that freedom is rooted in my history and my community. I'm tired, but I'm determined to keep growing. I'm a little scraped up, but I'm happy. And I no longer pretend that my Blackness is neutral. I'm tall, I'm smart, I still like tennis, and I'm boldly Black.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. It's resonating. Thank you for sharing and for being so honest with your story. It's so moving. And a fun fact about Jalen, she once shared she has fallen asleep on a train and ended up in another country twice. I'm here to share some fun facts about our speakers. And I love that it feels like she just took us on a journey with her. So thank you so much, Jalen. And I just want to remind everyone that we'll be having some talk back with the storytellers. If you have questions or just want to connect with Jalen and every other speaker, please send your questions to the questions for storytellers, Jane, Suja, Bach, the top of the participants list, but also we'll get to that in a little bit. And if you submit a question, definitely please indicate who the question's for. So this is our final storyteller. We are very excited to have Emil Guillermo, an award-winning journalist, writer, humorist, podcaster, and mindfulness teacher. He has been writing a weekly column on race, politics, and Asian America since 1995, which is now on the Asian American Legal Defense and Education Fund website. He was the first Filipino American to host a national news show when he was with NPR's All Things Considered. He's from Northern California and he hosts the PETA podcast and is a longtime vegan. His story is called Mindfully Harvard.
I'm at the beach, California's Central Coast, summertime 3 years ago. My wife and I are celebrating our 30th wedding anniversary, and we thought it'd be a good idea to have a little reunion, bring together all the kids from all over the country to come together to see if we made a good choice 30 years ago, or maybe we made a good choice about renting this rickety old beach house here on the central coast of California. Except there's one problem. I'm on the beach and I'm fully clothed. I'm a workaholic. I even have my phone here, and the phone rings. Robocall. It's a 617 number. Harvard? It's Chloe. I know her, but she says, you don't know me, but I'm calling from a list and you're in the class. Are you coming to the reunion? And before I can answer, she launches into how she has 2 kids and one works for Google and he's special and searchable. And my daughter, well, she's special. And my husband, I met him freshman year. We're married still. We're not in therapy. We're therapists. How about you? Do you want to be Facebook friends? And I'm thinking, this is why some people who didn't go to Harvard hate certain people who did. I mean, how do I counter that? I met my wife. She went to Berkeley and now she's a senior VP at PETA and we're vegan, so we don't eat meat. But she comes on the Tucker Carlson show, after which I make her sleep on the couch for 7 days afterwards. And my kids, my 3 kids, Caucasian, Filipino, Caucapinos, and every soccer trophy I bought for them, they earned. I didn't want to spill too many details, otherwise Chloe would want them as clients. The point is, this woman played a significant role in my Harvard career. I met her freshman year at a mixer. I was a fresh-faced San Francisco kid. My father was a Filipino immigrant, a professional fry cook. Me, I was going places. And here I found Chloe fetching. Not kvetching, fetching. And I said, we ought to go on a coffee date sometime. The next day, I'm at her dorm. I'm knocking on her door. And her overprotected roommates say, oh, Chloe, she's busy washing her hair. Washing her hair? You mean like in that Broadway show, South Pacific? I'm from the West Coast. I like wet. I didn't get a different answer. I get it. I was being crushed by my crush. So insignificant a thing, but this sort of thing snowballs, especially on the East Coast. It lets self-doubt creep in. Self-doubt. Was it because I wasn't white? Because I wasn't rich enough? Maybe because I wasn't Filipino enough? I had to be self-loving, full of self-care. Before there was a mindfulness, self-loving, not in the freshman dorm kind of self-loving, but in that mindfulness kind of way. And no one knew what mindfulness was back then. It took me 4 years to find myself. I took a history class, an Asian history class, and studied Filipino immigration. No textbooks. Had to go straight to Widener, to the stacks. And there it was, the whole story about my father. He came from the Philippines as a colonized Filipino, not a citizen, not a slave, not a citizen, couldn't own land, couldn't intermarry, couldn't be seen with white women. In the 20s, you'd be shot or you'd be killed if you were seen with a white woman. I didn't realize that it took some courage to be a Filipino in America. Armed with that story, it gave me courage to do the only thing I ever did at Harvard. I was a member of the Lampoon, and I gave the Ivy oration my year. I was funnier than the president, and I was chosen to make fun of Harvard, but I wasn't joking. I went to Harvard Yard on class day, and I started speaking like this. Hello, it's so good to be here at Harvard. Veritas, Veritas. Oh, is this the right speaker? I started talking like my daddy, and people say, oh, you see, the right person. Oh, don't worry, because now I talk like this. Harvard man, America's corporate superhero, came in third world, left 2.5. And I got this laugh, this roar of approval like I never heard before. And they were just happy that I spoke decent English and that I was just like them, although I knew I wasn't. I knew I graduated not with white privilege. I graduated with white voice privilege, which sounds like equality, but it's a little like being in a Filipino Beatles tribute band. My dad witnessed it all, never went east of Reno in his life, and there he was in the front row. Oh, Sonny boy, you gave Harvard the finger. Yeah, and it feels so good. I'm not a Harvard man. I'm me. I'm you. I'm us. This was my affirmative action. I had Chloe on hold the whole time. I put down the phone. I took off my shirt. I'm at the beach. I turned to my wife and I say, honey, let's celebrate.
What a great and hilarious way to end these amazing stories. And I am so glad we have the chat to see everyone cracking up. Emil, you're hilarious and real and raw. And it's no surprise that he wrote jokes for Jay Leno. He performs at the fringe festivals around the country, including a show about Harvard and NPR called Emil Amok All Pucked Up. He's good at those puns. So if you want to hear more of Emil, he does a daily micro talk show on Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders called Emil Amok's Takeout on Facebook and www.amok.com. So as Story Slam judge Julianne Cromit noted, the 5 stories that were told, give me one second. The 5 stories that were told really unified a lot of very different experiences, but all in a very honest way. And ultimately, we can learn something from all these different stories. And what that tells us is that we can learn a lot from these different ethnic experiences, which means ethnic studies. We hope that you are able to support all these organizations that are in support of having ethnic studies at Harvard, something that we've needed for a very long time. So let me transition over to, are you ready for some conversations, these breakouts? We're really excited for that. If you have any thoughts about ethnic studies and if you want to share your support, please leave comments on why you think we should have this. Really want to hear from you. So something to consider before we transition over is that this was put together by a lot of remarkable people who all contributed to making this a very special night. And there's still more to include here. So before we transition over to the storytellers, we have one more amazing performance. So thank you again to Devin Gates, who is a Harvard junior, who opened up this slam. So Devin, who studies music and social anthropology while pursuing a dual degree with Berklee College in music. She has studied with Esperanza Spalding and Vijay Iyer, among others, and she's featured on this train that we're going to hear. It's part of a pre-pandemic thesis performance of Gabe Fox Peck of 19 and also with Joshua Brian Campbell of 2016. So while you enjoy these brilliant jazz performance, these musicians, please continue to submit story questions over to the storytellers in the chat. Enjoy.
This train don't carry no liars. This train, I said this train don't carry no liars. This train, ooh, this train don't carry no liars. Ooh, no high flyers. Said this train is bound, bound for glory. This train, I said this train is
this train.
Wasn't that powerful and beautiful? That is such an incredible performance that I think is so inspiring and moving after such great stories. All the different forms of art we've seen have been incredible. And that's the present and future of Harvard. So thank you, Devin. Thank you for that. So we're beginning our topic with our 5 Unity storytellers soon. So people asked a lot of great questions. So we thought we'd dive into that first. So before we do breakouts, we'll have a couple conversations with these amazing storytellers. So welcome them back into the spotlight. Thank you for your incredible stories.
Great to be with so many incredibly talented storytellers who could be my daughters, I think. But I'm very happy to be a teller here in this group.
I love it. Well, why don't we jump in first with you, Emil? How do you find that resolve to share such personal stories? I mean, you went in, and I'm curious if you have any suggestions for people who are listening who might want to feel compelled to still tell stories, but also in the way that you do. And you have so much humor and just authentic, raw voice in your storytelling.
Well, the humor was real because the experience was so painful, right? It was like that was all 100% true. That happened. I barely changed a name, but and the thing is, when you tell these stories, you're really saying you're not alone, because we all went to Harvard and we didn't just look, I graduated exceptionally normal, and we didn't just graduate with a degree. We graduated with a degree and with wounds, and we had to figure out our way, to how do we deal with this, right? And a lot of us are just grinders. We're going to get to it. And thank goodness 7 years ago, I discovered meditation, like so many other people here, because look, I don't wallow in self-pity, I wallow in self-discovery, right? So we find ourselves and we tell our stories. And if you want, I put my contact information. If you want to meditate in a Zoom room with me and tell stories, Harvard stories, we could be anonymous alumni, and tell stories. And because, we've all been through our heroes' journeys, right? And now let's help each other. This is an incredible thing. Look, I went to Harvard decades ago. I could not imagine a collection like this, a confluence of color, right? In fact, for all Harvard did to me, like I couldn't make fun the way I make fun now because, back at the Lampoon, I was there, Negro was a punchline. And, so what am I going to do? Tell them jokes about Filipinos? I mean, so I just want to help people. And also I want to tell this story before it's me and Jeffrey Epstein, we're in a police lineup, right? And we're both wearing Harvard t-shirts because he loved to wear his Harvard t-shirt. So we're in a police lineup. And the question is, who went to Harvard? And 100% of the time, the police, the public are going to point to Jeffrey Epstein. That's guilt by white privilege. And it's why I, despite my, my mixed experience at Harvard, did I ever feel like I belong? Hey, Larry, President Larry, sometimes I did, but sometimes I didn't. I think I always mention Harvard because it smashes the assumption. What is the assumption? A nice little Filipino. Hey, Rosa, you were captain of dorm crew. I didn't even make it to captain of dorm crew. Honors to you. I'm just saying we smash the assumptions all the time, and we're going to continue to do that. And I'm honored to be in the presence of these tellers and this alumni community.
Thank you for that. And Ethel, I'm curious for you, I'll ask you the question, but I would imagine when you came back home, you went off to have this Harvard experience. I'd imagine that was part of the conversation of someone who came home. Not everyone has done that or has been able to do that. But I'm curious for you, if you have any words of encouragement for people who are trying to affect change in their own community, especially after having had this Harvard experience, that perspective, and then remembering who they really are still on the ground with their own people.
Yeah, I think bringing the resources that Harvard gives you back to your community is so important. We don't want us leaving and going to such a fabulous institution and becoming such a part of such an amazing network to have no impact at home. So I think it is, when you get that opportunity, and I know it's hard to find like the right moment. Right after college, I did go straight back home. But it just felt like I didn't have enough of the resources I needed to impact my community. I started out working in education, and it just kind of felt like I was treading water. And I felt like I was hitting that wall that framework that law and policy imposed on my community that brought my kids to the classroom unprepared to learn because they were just trying to survive. And so I went back and the next time I came home, it was like, I'm going to go get the experience that I feel like I need to come back and really be an asset to my community. And it was tough watching from the sidelines, seeing things happen and wanting to work on these really important issues. And I had that opportunity when I was asked to come home to be Attorney General, and it was great. And it was amazing because, I had the background I needed in so many different areas to handle the challenges that were facing my nation as legal issues at that time. And I did get a question on whether, I had much of an impact when I was Attorney General. And it's hard to say, because there's sort of like the impact on the ground, the impact to the people, and working in government, there are limitations, like you're kind of restricted by how the government wants to serve the people when you're representing the government in that way. And so now it's really refreshing to be working in an NGO context where I can really define the terms with which I engage with the public and the service that I deliver to the public. But it's been really great. I mean, like when you get that chance, definitely do it. And the people are so happy to have you there as a resource helping. Yeah, it's it's amazing the incredible things. Like when I would come back to campus for different events, there would be all these people, professors saying like, how can we help you guys? And so you really are able to leverage Harvard to benefit your community in a tremendous way that you're not able to do on the margins or the peripheries unless you're like right there in it with the people.
Thank you for that. I think what you're talking about, the personal agency we have, is so key, and the role that others can play, allies especially. So question for you, Jalen. I'm really curious, in everything you shared, you were in that experience on your own, and you're evolving the role you play and the voice you have, but how can allies support you? And do you have any examples, if you wouldn't mind sharing, when someone maybe thought they intended well, but the delivery wasn't quite there, and maybe we can learn from that as allies who want to support?
I think much of my experience, a lot of the pain at least, came from folks like assuming, specifically white folks, assuming that their own experience was like the only one or the best one or the proper one. And that's 100% not true. I think of a specific moment in high school when some friends were talking about the music that they listened to, and it was like all of these like 80s rock bands and like these bands from like the 40s and the 50s that I had like never heard of before. And I was like, I grew up on soul and funk. I grew up on Bill Withers and the Isley Brothers, and like there's not just nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic. And like those types of experiences just kind of like kept happening. And I was like, there's something, it's not me. There's something happening here, some sort of disconnect where like folks believe that what they did and what they grew up in, the way that they move about the world is the right one. So like stepping away from that mindset is 100% the first step.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. And I think it's powerful because so often we go through those moments where people say things that they don't even realize, and where they're on our own, just smiling through it or speaking up. But just remember, you're helping us. I think a lot of people are resonating with what they're sharing, because there's been some version of that people have experienced. It's not that it's all the same, but thank you for sharing that and reminding us that someone's going through it in some way too. Yeah. And so question, Sade, about, thinking about your own experience, being such a multidimensional person. You defied a lot of stereotypes. You defied actually stereotypes that you thought existed about a white only experience you thought was only afforded to some people, and you made it your own. So what would you give advice? What kind of advice would you offer to people who maybe are afraid to take that plunge and either don't think it's for them, or maybe haven't given themselves permission to just unplug, or, COVID things aside, in theory, being able to take a trip like that? Any advice?
Yeah, I think the first thing I say is go for it. Like, I think there's so many things that we tell ourselves and that we kind of, like create obstacles in our own minds or in whatever reason, right? Like I know that, some of us are parents, or some of us have other things going on. You can't just kind of leave and do, but I think there are ways that you can do it. There are ways to go around it. There are ways to figure out how to take your babies with you and that type of thing. And I remember reading a book or maybe seeing the title of a book while I was traveling, and it was Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I feel like so often we have this like fear and we kind of go based on that and we just hold ourselves back. And I think being able to say, absolutely not. Like, maybe I'm not fearless, but I'm gonna feel this fear and I'm gonna keep going. I'm just gonna, make it happen. And I think even just thinking on the budget side, some folks are like, I don't know, this is, I haven't saved up yet, but there are so many ways to travel, on a budget, and whether it's for a short amount of time, a shorter vacation or a longer kind of experience or adventure, I think it's absolutely doable. And there's so many resources out there. I mean, I literally sat for like a couple of weeks and I was like, okay, where am I going to go? And how much am I going to spend? And, am I going to do the luxury, or am I going to do a little more, how much do I have and how long can I do it for? And so absolutely go for it.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I love just that energy. I feel like you have such a bright light, and everyone's like, we want to travel. What else should I think we should do? So thank you for being such a light, and hopefully another light who gets to celebrate all day, Rosa, on her birthday. Thank you again for being here, celebrating on your birthday evening. It feels like can we just take a moment to say like happy birthday to her? I mean, the speakers come, happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday to you. Okay, a little bit. So Rosa, thank you for sharing your story, and just I hope that we can honor you not only on your birthday, but also as an artist. And so I'm curious, how has your sense of self and identity impacted your expression as an artist?
Hi, Ellie and everybody. Thank you for the question and just everyone for being here. I have so many friends and loved ones on the chat right now, just like messaging, and yeah, 35 today, y'all. You know, that's a really big milestone in my life. And I think, you know, this storytelling opportunity came at a really perfect time for me because it's been a process of discovering, you know, my artistic voice and discovering what kind of performances I want to do and what kind of work I want to make and collaborate on. And it was just such a beautiful way to process, you know, my history, my family background. And, you know, I have to say something that I think might help somebody is that, you know, Harvard was really difficult because I wasn't aware of all the layers of trauma and of hardship that my family had gone through. I think that as, you know, as survivors of many things, you know, we sometimes, probably all the storytellers can relate to this based on the stories, but we sometimes have to just power through and get it done and, you know, do what you think you should be doing with your life, such as get perfect grades and go to Harvard and do all these amazing things. And I sort of, you know, stuffed and buried like a lot of this family, the experiences with my family that I'd had. And I think Harvard was a wonderful time to start that process of who am I, you know, away from my family, 3,000 miles away on the East Coast in a place that nobody I knew had ever been. And over the years, you know, I took like a decade after Harvard to find myself, I guess. And in that process, you know, performing, writing, being a musician, being a vocalist, all of those musical tools helped me to not only process, you know, like everything my family has been through as immigrants from Mexico, but also to create from a different perspective, to create from a place of healing and to create from a place of, I am all these things. Yeah, I'm a straight A student and I'm a Harvard grad and I'm also like a goofball and I love to go to karaoke. Like that's my favorite thing to do in the whole wide world. Like I'll just happy being at karaoke for like 3 or 4 hours. My friends can attest to that very much. And I'm also, you know, a person in my community and I'm a sister and I'm a daughter and I have all these parts of myself that have gotten me to where I am now. So, you know, if there's anyone who hasn't had like the linear path to their calling and has feeling the pressure of like, I should know what I'm supposed to do with my life and I should be Oprah already. And I, you know, I should have this like resume that's just like, you know, stellar and perfect. You know, I have to say my journey has not been such, and yet I've found so much joy in the process of learning who I am. You know, Rosa Evangelina Beltran, with this name that came to me through a grandmother and a bio dad that I never knew. And, you know, I'm still discovering that story. You know, like Sheila, our amazing, amazing story coach, you know, was like, that was like a therapy session, coaching. But, you know, she was saying the story is still being written. And I think that goes for all of us here. My story is still being written. I feel like I'm just getting started. And, you know, I perform, I sing, I do, I make things. I'm a graduate student in music and in creative writing right now, which is like so dreamy, like American dream, you know. It's just such a privilege to get to imagine other ways of being and imagine other ways of living and being in my body, you know, after trauma and after hardship. So I'm having so much fun, and I can't believe I went to college all those years ago, but I think the journey has been so beautiful since. I mean, it's been difficult sometimes. We've all gone through the, dark nights and dark night of the soul, probably at some point. I don't think anyone is immune. But I have to say, my journey has been so much richer through being able to perform and being able to share my story today with y'all, but also in other places of my life. And I'm just so inspired. I want to work with youth. I already work with, I teach, and I'm inspired to keep conjuring, new stories and stories that just haven't been told and really need to be told through music, through dance, through the arts. That's my jam. But yeah, and I just want to close with, my sense of self, I think, has been really majorly, massively impacted by the guerrera who raised me, my mother. And Mami, si estás viendo, I love you. And the guerreras who raised us, I think Shirley put that in the chat, and Glenda, like, I want to honor that, as someone who grew up, with various, and then no father figures. It's kind of been like very, it's been a mosaic of a family, that I grew up with, and my family of choice. So yeah, here I am. This is like the best, coolest way to celebrate my birthday. Thank you all for letting me be part of it. And what an incredible team to work with. And I'm just so excited to hear more of our stories. And thank you all for Unity Weekend. What an incredible opportunity to be together.
The number of mic drops we've had tonight. Thank you, Rosa. Thank you all. There's been so many. And there are a couple more thank yous I definitely want to make sure to share. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions. I got to mash up a few to ask everyone, all these amazing storytellers. So before we break out into the breakout rooms and do the socializing, I wanted to make sure to acknowledge, first of all, thank you to the storytellers. Thank you so much. You are so brave and you put so much work into getting ready for these performances, and you killed it. Everyone felt it. Everyone's moved. The spectrum was beautiful. So thank you for that. And thank you to our brilliant judges who recognized these stories were the ones that would challenge us, evoke feelings in us, and bring us together. Thank you to storytelling coach Sheila Traster. Thank you so much for connecting with everyone here. All the storytellers have said amazing things about you. So thank you for helping their stories get even better. Thank you to the Story Slam organizers, Jane Sujan Bach, Tree Long, and Jeannie Park. You ladies are amazing. Yeah, everything dialed in. So thank you for that. I'm so impressed with all the work you put into this. Everyone just know a lot of energy went into this. Thank you so much. And to the Harvard Alumni Association for all the support in producing the event. And I personally have to say thank you to Glenda, who's watching here. She looped me in. All the different communities had a role in shaping this. And so she plugged me into MC this. And it's an honor to be here with you all. So